The upscale restaurant shimmered with golden chandeliers, its polished marble floors reflecting the glow of candles flickering on every table. Wealthy diners whispered softly, sipping expensive wine and tasting delicacies from silver platters. In the middle of it all sat Clara Weston, a paralyzed CEO known for her brilliance in the corporate world. Dressed in a navy blue silk gown, her hair pinned neatly back, she exuded elegance, but behind her poise, nerves gnawed at her. This was not the environment where she usually felt vulnerable, yet tonight was different. Tonight, she wasn't the boss commanding boardrooms. She was a woman on a blind date. Her best friend, Miranda, had insisted she deserved a chance at love. Not everyone is intimidated by your wheelchair, Clara, she had said firmly while pushing her into this arrangement. But Clara knew better. Too many men had left her after realizing she wasn't just powerful, she was also paralyzed from the waist down. It wasn't pity she feared, but the judgment lurking in people's eyes. As she waited, her eyes darted to the restaurant's entrance. Each time the door opened, she straightened, only to feel disappointment when another couple or family entered. Then it happened. A man walked in, and Clara instantly knew something was wrong. He was nothing like what she had imagined. Instead of a polished businessman in a tailored suit, this man wore grease-stained boots, faded jeans, and a checkered shirt with sleeves rolled up. His rough hands, clearly used to physical labor, contrasted sharply with the diamond cufflinks of men around him. The murmur of conversation dipped for a moment as eyes followed him. Some people chuckled, others whispered. He looked out of place in this glittering world. But what unsettled Clara the most was his confidence. He scanned the room, unbothered by the judgment, and then his gaze landed on her. A smile spread across his face as if he'd been searching only for her. He walked toward her table, boots echoing against the polished floor, and stopped right in front of her. "Clara Weston?" he asked warmly. Clara blinked, stunned. Her mind screamed this is a mistake. Surely her friend hadn't set her up with a mechanic. Flustered, she tried to maintain her composure, her hand tightening around her wine glass. "Yes, but I think you may be at the wrong table," she said coolly. But the man chuckled, his voice deep and easy. "Nope. Right table. I'm Ethan Cole. And I guess I'm your date." The restaurant around them faded into a blur as Clara's stomach dropped. Embarrassment washed over her. A CEO dining with a mechanic. People were already staring. This couldn't be real. But Ethan pulled out the chair across from her with a casual confidence, sat down, and met her sharp, skeptical gaze without flinching. The blind date had officially begun, but not in the way Clara had ever expected. Clara shifted uncomfortably in her wheelchair, her polished composure tested by the unexpected turn her evening had taken. Ethan sat across from her, his posture relaxed, his smile unshaken despite the sharp edge in her tone. She hated how people were still glancing at them, some smirking as though this were some sort of comedy, an elegant CEO paired with a man who looked as if he had walked straight out of an auto shop. "So," Ethan began, his voice casual, as though he didn't notice or didn't care about the judgment swirling around them. "You come here often." Clara nearly choked on her sip of water. "Really? The oldest line in the book." Her lips tightened as she responded, "Not with people who show up dressed like they just left work under a car." Instead of offense, Ethan laughed, a hearty, genuine laugh that startled her. "Well, you're not wrong. I did finish fixing a transmission right before this. Didn't want to be late." Clara frowned. "You could have changed." "I could have," Ethan admitted with a shrug. "But then I wouldn't be me. And I figured, if we're supposed to get to know each other, I'd rather you meet the real me than some polished version in a suit I hate." His words caught her off guard. She was used to men pretending, dressing up their flaws, hiding their weaknesses, trying to impress her with money or connections. Ethan wasn't trying at all. And yet, there was an honesty in his voice she couldn't ignore. Still, she wasn't ready to soften. "Well, the real you doesn't exactly fit here," she said sharply, gesturing around at the crystal chandeliers, the waiters in crisp uniforms, the diners with diamond watches. Ethan leaned forward, his eyes twinkling with amusement. "Neither do I. But then again, neither do you." Clara froze. "Excuse me. You're looking at everyone, waiting for them to judge you. But I think you're stronger than that. Doesn't take a genius to see you'd rather be anywhere else than this fancy place." The comment disarmed her. How could a stranger read her so easily? She tried to mask her surprise with a dry laugh. And what about you, Ethan? Why agree to this blind date in a place where you clearly stand out? He shrugged again, easy as ever. Because sometimes life puts you in rooms you don't belong in, until you do. Besides, Miranda told me you're worth it. Her friend's name falling from his lips made Clara pause. She hadn't realized how much Miranda had shared about her. It made her uneasy, and yet, curious. Dinner continued awkwardly. Clara tried steering the conversation toward business, expecting Ethan to falter. Instead, he countered with stories about rebuilding classic cars, the patience it took to restore beauty where others saw junk. She noticed the way his eyes lit up when he spoke about engines, about giving broken things a second chance. Though she fought it, part of her admired his passion. Still, pride kept her walls high. Clara told herself this was a disaster, that she couldn't possibly have anything in common with a mechanic. And yet, deep inside, she felt the first crack in the icy barrier she had built around herself. The clinking of silverware and soft piano music filled the background as the awkward tension between Clara and Ethan began to shift. For the first half hour, she had fought hard to keep her defenses up, holding onto her polished CEO demeanor like armor. But something about Ethan's unwavering calmness, his refusal to be rattled by her cold remarks or the curious glances of other diners, made it increasingly difficult to keep her guard intact. Ethan leaned back in his chair, his rough hands resting comfortably on the table, fingers scarred from years of work. His eyes were steady, curious but not invasive, warm without pity. Clara had grown accustomed to people looking at her wheelchair with discomfort, or worse, with that subtle flicker of sympathy she despised. But Ethan didn't do that. He looked directly at her, as though the chair didn't matter, as though she were just a woman across the table from him. Finally, after another sip of wine to steady her nerves, Clara decided to address the unspoken elephant in the room. "You're not going to ask," she said, her tone sharper than intended. Ethan raised a brow. "Ask what?" Her lips thinned. "About this." She gestured to the wheelchair, her voice quieter now. Most men couldn't last a conversation without circling back to it, asking how it happened, or worse, offering clumsy reassurances that made her feel smaller than she already did. Instead of dodging, Ethan tilted his head. "If you want to tell me, I'll listen. If you don't, that's fine too. I figure it doesn't define you unless you want it to." The simplicity of his response floored her. He didn't probe. He didn't dance around it. He gave her control, something she rarely felt in personal interactions. After a moment of silence, Clara surprised herself by speaking. "Car accident. 2 years ago. Spinal cord injury." Her voice faltered, but she steadied it quickly, unwilling to let him hear weakness. "Some people never came back after that. Apparently, they liked the version of me that could walk better than the one sitting here." Ethan's expression softened, not with pity but with understanding. He leaned forward, resting his elbows on the table. "Then those people weren't strong enough to deserve you. Anyone can sit with you when life is perfect. It takes real strength to sit with you when it's not." Clara blinked, stunned. No one had ever put it that way before. Her usual defense, the icy laugh, the dismissive comment, didn't come. For the first time in years, she felt seen. Ethan smiled gently. "You know, broken things don't scare me. I work with them every day. Cars people think are beyond repair, I bring them back to life. You're not broken, Clara. You're just different. And that's not a bad thing." Her chest tightened. She wanted to argue, to remind him she wasn't looking for a pep talk, but the sincerity in his voice silenced her. Instead, an unexpected laugh slipped past her lips, light and genuine. Ethan grinned, clearly pleased. As dinner continued, the sharp edges of their conversation softened. Clara found herself laughing more than she had in months. Ethan teased her gently about being too serious, and she teased him back about smelling faintly of motor oil. The contrast between them, polished CEO and grease-stained mechanic, should have been absurd. Yet somehow, it felt natural. By the time dessert arrived, Clara realized she had forgotten to notice the stares of others. For once, she wasn't focused on what people thought of her chair, her appearance, or her reputation. She was focused on Ethan, the way his eyes crinkled when he smiled, the way he spoke with passion about his craft, the way he treated her not as a fragile figure in a chair, but as a woman worth knowing. What began as a disaster was slowly turning into something Clara never expected, a connection she couldn't deny. The dinner plates had been cleared away, leaving only the soft glow of a flickering candle between them. Clara had expected this evening to be over quickly, that she would escape with a polite excuse and write it off as yet another failed attempt at dating. But now, hours later, she found herself reluctant to leave. Ethan had a way of disarming her, of pulling her into conversations that made her forget the heaviness she carried every day. For the first time in years, she didn't feel like the paralyzed CEO. She just felt like Clara. When the waiter brought the check, Ethan reached for it without hesitation. Clara frowned. "You don't need to." He cut her off with a grin. "Relax. You're allowed to let someone else handle the bill once in a while." That made her laugh, an unpolished, genuine laugh that surprised them both. She wasn't used to men challenging her like that, at least not outside the office. As they made their way to the door, Ethan walked casually beside her, matching her pace as she wheeled forward. He didn't push, didn't hover, he simply moved in sync, as though he understood the rhythm of her movement. Outside, the night air was cool, carrying the distant hum of traffic. Clara tilted her head back, breathing in the freshness, trying to steady the emotions swirling in her chest. She turned to him, ready to thank him politely and say goodbye. This had been nice, unexpectedly so, but she had no illusions. A mechanic and a CEO. Lived in two different worlds. Surely this couldn't be anything more than an odd, fleeting evening. But Ethan wasn't finished. "Hey," he said suddenly, pulling out his phone. "I want to show you something." Clara raised an eyebrow, skeptical. "If it's another car engine photo, not just an engine." He stepped closer, holding the phone so she could see the screen. There, in crisp blueprints and half-finished photographs, was a car design unlike anything she had ever seen. Sleek, modern, but clearly modified, its interior was reimagined, controls shifted, adapted for hands rather than feet. "I've been working on this in my shop," Ethan explained, his voice tinged with excitement. A sports car, fully modified for wheelchair users. Not a clunky van or a slow adaptation. Something fast, powerful, something that makes you feel alive again. Clara stared, her breath caught in her throat. Her fingers brushed the screen, tracing the outlines. "You built this." "Still building it," Ethan corrected. "But yeah, and I need someone to test it when it's done." He looked directly at her, eyes steady, filled with an openness that left no room for doubt. "I was hoping that person could be you." For a long moment, Clara couldn't speak. No man had ever offered her this, not just sympathy, not just kindness, but a chance to reclaim something she thought she had lost forever. Her independence, her thrill, her fire. Her chest tightened, tears prickling at the corners of her eyes. She quickly blinked them back, unwilling to show weakness. But Ethan caught the flicker anyway, and instead of calling attention to it, he simply smiled. "You see, Clara," he said softly, "I don't think you're defined by what you can't do. I think you're meant to show the world what you still can." Her heart pounded. For years, she had fought to prove her worth in boardrooms, in society, even in friendships. But here stood a man who didn't need convincing. A mechanic, of all people, who saw her not as fragile, not as broken, but as someone capable of living fully, boldly. She swallowed hard, then laughed through the lump in her throat. "If you actually finish this car, Ethan, I'll be the first one in the driver's seat." "That's a promise," he said, grinning. As he walked beside her toward the waiting valet, Clara realized something she never thought possible. What had begun as a blind date disaster might very well be the beginning of something extraordinary. Not because Ethan was perfect, or because he swept her into a fairy tale, but because he had reminded her of something she had forgotten. That even after loss, after disappointment, after the cruelest turns life could throw, there could still be surprises waiting. Surprises that made the heart race, the spirit rise, and the future feel wide open again. And for the first time in years, Clara let herself hope.